Got a pretty good crowd out there already. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, they're having their own little conversation.
They really are. They really are. Hey, if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition. Home Gadget Geeks, Thursday night. It is the 15th of April. It's tax day, but it's not. Second year in a row, at least here in the United States, we've been delayed. Mike, do you know what the day is?
Ooh,
now, is it June? Cody, do you know? June 17th, May 17th? What?
I just went and got it done, so I'm not sure.
And I'm a bad guy to ask because I'm like, as soon as I can do it, I do it just so, get the return in earlier and get all that done.
I need to. It's all ready. I had one question, one financial thing to ask. I asked my financial guy, and he goes, "Oh, that actually happened last year. You should have reported that on your last year's taxes." I'm like, oh God, that sinking feeling that you get? You're like, did I do that? And I tried to go back and look at my taxes to see if I had done it. I still don't know if I had or not, which means I really need to do a comprehensive audit on the whole, because it was a significant enough thing that, that's not one of those things. The IRS will catch it 3 years from now, and then it'll be a mess, right?
Yeah, so we're had to write them a check, and
I think I'm gonna have to actually get a CPA to help at this point. Go, okay, let's just go back. We'll fix it, and then you're gonna do my taxes every year from now, because I hate and it's really just the podcasting stuff that makes it so messy.
Yeah.
So the podcasting revenue. Well, happy tax day, at least here in the United States. To you, if you are listening live, love to have you jump in the chat room. And let us know where you're listening from. That's always kind of nice. I actually don't know where a lot of you, I kind of know where some of you are, but put where you're listening from. We're going to talk a lot about the alcohol beverage industry tonight. So if you're interested in that, hang out. If you're not, still hang out. It's going to be fun. Cody, I picked up some Moose Drool. I don't know if you've ever had this beer, but it's out of Big Sky, Montana.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it before.
It's a brown ale. We get, for some reason, my parents used to live up there, and we could get it locally. For some reason, it's available here. Mike, have you ever had Moose Drool?
I love Moose Drool. Yeah. I had it at a bar for the first time, and then I ended up trying to find it. I think our Hy-Vee carries it sometimes, but not all the time, so it's kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, brown ale, very tasty. 5%. So it's a good podcasting beer, and it was just one of those I hadn't seen for a long time. Cody, do you work in the industry? Do you follow craft beer, and are you a craft beer guy at all?
I enjoy drinking it, but I gotta say, for the part of the industry that I'm in, we're wine and spirits. So, you're sitting there with a nice 5% beer. I'm sitting here with some tequila, some reposado.
Ooh,
that's
nice.
There you go.
That's the name of the game for me.
Yeah. But do you ever? I mean, do you ever just downshift a little bit? go with the beers?
Every now and then I will downshift. And it's funny, actually. I mean, right. So I'm in now Northern California, and we've got a number of breweries up here that have popped up just kind of locally within the area where I am. But there's also they've gotten a little bit larger now. But 21st Amendment is one that I've gone there a handful of times. They have a couple of beers that I really, really enjoy. So,
Mike, Cody is living 5 miles maybe from where I grew up now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's in my neighborhoods. I mean, this is kind of where I grew up. So
very nice.
So he's hanging out there. Although lots of things have changed.
One or
since
two.
I left 30 years.
One or two.
Lots of things have changed. Brian says Moose Drool's the best. Jim Shoemaker says I've had Moose Drool in Billings, and they're a Big Sky, so Kalispell, Billings, that area of Montana. I used to go there regularly for business. Some really good skiing up there, Big Sky country.
And beautiful in the summer. We actually just went there this summer, went to Big Sky, went down to Yellowstone. Gorgeous there during the summer months. I gave my wife the choice tonight. So she was going to work out. I said, "Oh, would you want to grab me like a podcast drink tonight?" Yeah. And I didn't know what she was going to get me. And she ended up bringing home Coors Seltzer. So that's what I'm going with tonight. I should have told her the guest, and maybe she would have picked up something a little more exotic.
No, it's okay. It's okay. There's no judgment here.
Hey, you know what? I like them. I've said that on the show. I like a seltzer. So
since I used to judge you, Mike, for your Bud Light stuff all the time, or whatever garbage beer you were drinking. And then Cody, last summer, during the pandemic, my daughter came home from college early, and she brought her college fridge. We needed to, so I turned it into my beer fridge. Well, we also had a party for my wife's birthday that we had to cancel. So we'd bought all this beer, and it's a party. So you buy Bud Light, whatever. So it sat in the fridge for a while, and I called it my emergency beer. Like if you've run out of water, or sewer water or whatever, you got Bud Light. That's available. Well, one night I pulled it out, and during the show I started drinking it, and I was like, actually, this isn't too bad. So I've flipped a little bit on that, and I don't want to do it all the time. Don't get me wrong, but I do enjoy a good Bud.
Every now and then, it's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah. It is, yeah, and on tap, it's actually better than out of the can, so it's pretty good. Okay, let's get cooking here, guys. Thanks for coming out. And Joe says, "Oof, yeah, well, okay, good. Oh, well, Mike, how is the Coors Seltzer?"
I picked a bad flavor. I went to the fridge and I just grabbed one. I got the grapefruit, and I'm not the biggest grapefruit fan. So I'll tell you when I get to number 2, because that's mango. I'm sure that's good.
Well, let's hope so. Joe, who's down in Arkansas, and they have a lot of Lost 40 brewing down there. He's got another blackberry bramble. That sounds good. And I think Joe sent that to us. Mike, did we have a
was the blackberry one when he sent? I don't think it was.
No. Okay. Joe, Cody,
can't remember.
Sometimes we have listeners send us beer to try out, which is pretty great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The tequila you're drinking, is that kind of your go-to? Do you have like a go-to tequila? Because I know people are very particular about their tequila.
I'm a huge tequila fan too. I'm curious.
Curious, yeah. So this is actually, I think, just right now in California, and I think we are taking these guys into Florida and potentially Illinois. The brand is Miko Tequila. It's a smaller brand. It's a craft brand that's just getting started. It's really good. Working in the industry, I don't have the luxury of being overly picky and choosy, and I kind of have to be out there and testing and tasting around. But yeah, shout out to Miko Tequila. They're doing something really special. And we'll dive into this a little bit later. They actually are coming out with an RTD. RTD stands for ready to drink. So they're coming out with a canned tequila seltzer as well. So
tequila seltzer, huh?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's like a mix of my two favorite things. So that might be dangerous for me. I might be into that.
Oh yeah,
it's funny. There's kind of this. There's a big culture here around tequila. It was interesting. The executives at the company I work for, that's their thing is tequila. And of course, if they're drinking it when you go, you're gonna drink it. And I had never really drank tequila as a sipping drink. Right? It was college tequila. And man, totally changes the game though. When you have just that, when however you want to drink it, I was like, wow, okay, this is a totally different thing than what I remember tequila always being. And it's amazing kind of when you switch up how you drink it. And if you were the type who've only had it in kind of that setting of the shots and stuff like that, just having something, it's very different. So I was shocked and I really enjoyed it. It's one of the spirits. It's probably my go-to spirit. That and gin, just for me, for some reason, are my two favorites. Well,
it's funny. I was going to say the tequila and gin are probably the two where the difference between, I'll say the value end, the bottom shelf end, and even just, not all the way at the high end, but just even kind of a more medium priced, medium quality product. It's a huge jump. It's a huge jump. I think that there's a jump certainly with vodka. There's a jump certainly there with whiskey and particularly with bourbon. But I still really feel like when you go from that value end up a little bit with tequila and gin, it's a big difference. And to your point, Mike, I mean, the folks who have only ever had shots of these things, it's a whole new world for them to get into.
Mm-hmm. Is there a proper way to drink a sipping tequila? Because I have to admit I do it way wrong. Mainly because getting into it, right, it's very strong. So I always put a big ice cube in it, and kind of let it water it down just a little bit to be sipping on it. Yeah. Is that one of those things you go to a place and everyone's be like, oh, dude, like no, you don't put a ice cube in your tequila.
I think if you go to probably a bar and they're gonna probably hand it to you in a shot glass or like in a rocks glass, and they'll probably give it to you neat. I think if you want to add a little water to it to dilute it down, I mean, it's the same thing with bourbon and with whiskey as well. It's not uncommon to see folks water it down a little bit. If you go down to Mexico and you start throwing ice cubes in your tequila, they if you're at the distillery, it might take a little offense to that. So I'd say there you might just want to suck it up and go for it straight.
For me, it's actually the temperature too. Like I kind of like that colder. I don't know why. To me, it's just more palatable when it's colder. And I always feel that way about I think every single drink except for like coffee. I swear, like I don't like iced coffee, but everything else I like a little bit.
Well, you
colder.
could chill it, Mike. Instead of throwing ice cube in it, you could chill it.
That's probably a good idea. I probably could chill it. But everyone else that comes over, they all just drink it neat, room temperature. So I feel like I'd be ruining it for everyone. For me, it's just easy to throw a big ice cube in.
You could chill the glass. That's what you could do, and then when you pour the tequila in, that'll lower
now we're
it down
getting
a little
high
bit.
class. I like it.
Yeah.
That's
See,
frosted glasses and everything.
You get in the pre-show.
And and then no one has to know. It'll look like you're drinking it neat just with everybody else, and no one they have to be none the wiser that you're having a chilled drink.
There you go. There you go. Tip number 1, and we're not even in the show.
Wait, we didn't start the show yet?
No, we have not.
I thought we just started already.
No, that's okay. It was that seltzer that got you. No.
We got in the groove.
Let me kick this thing off so we can do this. Here we go. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 486, recorded on April 15th, 2021. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in Bellevue. Mike, what I thought we were in spring, and we've had 2 freeze warnings in a row. What's going on, man? What's happening here?
I have no idea. I had this problem yesterday. When you are used to the 70 degrees and then you work in your basement and you look outside and it looks gorgeous. I went to my kid's soccer practice in shorts and a short sleeve shirt, and I was freezing. I did not realize how actually cold it was. Yeah, Nebraska, we just can't decide. Do we want to be like 50s? Do we want to be 75? And then in the middle of the night, apparently now we're just deciding to go back down to freezing.
Yeah, it's been insane. Cody, you live in what I think is the best place in the world for weather. Like, I think San Jose, my hometown, I didn't know how good I had it till I left. It's always sunny and 75, right? I mean, it's
pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, you would have we talk about the weather on this show every show because there's weather to talk about. You would have nothing. You'd be like, yep, another nice week. We could use a little rain.
Well, so it's funny, right? Because like growing up, I grew up in California as well, and the meteorologist, it was sort of like, and what do you do exactly?
I know.
Because it was always it's
hard.
either 75, 80, maybe it's 85, but it's kind of this 10-degree range.
Not that hard. Well, we're hoping. I think spring is on the way. I got tricked into putting some plants in that I thought we were clear, and of course we've had freeze warnings the last 2 nights, and I think it got them. So it's like, well, I'll be replanting those. So anyways, we'll remind folks, you can catch the show notes to the show out at theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget, if you want to join us in the world of crypto, it continues, Mike. Crypto markets continue. Cody, have you jumped in on this crypto thing? Are you a crypto guy at all?
I'm still observing.
Okay.
So I'm actively observing, but yeah, I'm not ready to jump in yet. Maybe you guys can talk me into it tonight.
Well,
we'll see.
We did a whole show on it last week, kind of bringing everybody up to speed on the market. If you want to dabble in it, if you go to theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase, open an account there. Your first, after you put in 100, you deposit 100 to $100 trade, you get $10. So it's not a bad way. You get a little 10% boost on there. We have been telling people, like, don't go big on it if you don't understand it, because this is not one of those. I've watched a lot of people jump into this thing and kind of go crazy. And you're like, this thing can move. Mike and I have watched this thing move fast both directions, right, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
that's why I'm hoping one more of those down direction happens so I can give me a good chance to get back in. I'm waiting for that 2018 January of 2018 thing to happen again, where we were at our $20,000 high, dropped all the way down, and we hit back down to like 3,000 or 4,000 at some point in that next year. So yeah, I'm waiting for that.
Me too. I'd like to see. So Cody, you can be, maybe if you invested in it, that would just cause the drop, because that's usually what happens.
That's usually what happens when we talk about it. Yeah.
And it'll be that $100 that just tips it over the edge.
That's it. It'll be like, you'll buy in. That'll be the highest you will ever see it as it's plummeting. So don't do that. But if you're listening, you want to join us on Coinbase, the way to do that, theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase to get that done.
Newly public company, by the way.
Was that
public this week.
Was that Thursday?
Yep.
Was that Wednesday?
Yesterday,
this
I
week?
believe.
Yesterday? How are they? Have you followed it? How are they?
They
how's
closed
it-
down off their opening. I mean, they're going to have a hard time. They think they were valued at $61 billion. That's a very hard price tag to justify. When they were talking about their potential market, they literally listed like every single cell phone in the world. Like, yeah, anyone with a cell phone, that's our potential market. I'm like, okay. So I think they're gonna have some struggles out the gate.
Okay.
But nonetheless, they are a publicly traded company now.
Well, good for them for going public, but then there's all kinds of that brings a whole bunch of new problems of the quarterly reporting and all the regulatory stuff that has to go on. I mean, stuff you should probably be doing anyways. But the a new scrutiny. Probably, Mike, good for crypto to have the company that's working with it with this kind of scrutiny, because I think that's been one of the problems of the perception of crypto is that it's just the Wild West, no regulatory, no, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons. I think you're always
Yeah,
going to
well,
get the
for
crypto
sure.
purists who are like, well, now Coinbase is beholden to their shareholders. And before we were kind of like this, decentralized, not controlled by any government. And now one of the biggest, places where people get into the crypto market is going to
Yeah.
be out for profit for shareholders instead of, being true to the crypto mantra. So there's going to be arguments from both sides. I'm not really sure where I land on that. Probably somewhere right smack dab in the middle, like I usually do on these issues. So yeah, but it's good nonetheless, right? It's just getting it more and more mainstream, which I think is good.
It's the on-ramp that's getting regulated, and I think that's
Exactly.
actually helpful to crypto. It gives it a little bit more
Validity.
makes it a little bit more legitimate. Yeah,
Yeah.
from that standpoint. So, but you're right, everybody's all over the place on that thing. So,
Right.
anyways, well, we have Cody Wheat with us. Cody joined us I think we forget 19, 20 months ago. So it was Cody, it was a whole different world in August of 2019, the last time you were on here. Give us, let's spend a little time, catch us up a little bit. What have you been doing? Where have you gone? You started with a new company the last time we talked to you. You were out in Southern California. Is that right? Yeah.
I was. Yeah.
So do a quick 2-minute catch up of where you've been and what you've been doing.
Sure. So the last time we spoke, I was living in Highland Park, which is kind of the east side of Los Angeles. I was in a closet. So if people want to go back and find that episode, it's kind of hilarious. I was recording from an oversized closet, which was very just indicative of the whole situation.
It was fine. It was the show was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time. As you mentioned, I was a handful of months into starting with this new company, LibDib. And at that point it was towards the end of 2019. So I was getting ready to move up to San Jose, in part on the premise that being in the office and having face-to-face time with my coworkers was an important thing and something that was going to be a worthwhile endeavor. Obviously 2020 had some different plans. So I ended up moving up to San Jose middle to end of January. So had, a month or 6 weeks to sort of check out San Jose, spend a few weekends in San Francisco and see some friends up there. And then that all came to a screeching halt. And, that time period of March, April, this time last year, March, April, May, there was a lot of uncertainty around what this was going to look like. Half of our business was selling to bars and restaurants. And so when half of your business or, 40% of your business just all of a sudden isn't there, that was definitely, there were a lot of restless nights, I'll say, during those few months. I'm happy to report now that we pulled through. We kind of pivoted as a company and started working with some more online retailers and different online opportunities. And we can certainly dive into what that's looking like, because I think it impacts the consumer experience quite a bit as well. And we're really excited out here for bars and restaurants to get back opened up and start supporting those guys and just get ready to some semblance of life after COVID and some semblance of normal.
What are the rules in the Bay Area right now as far as when are they feeling like bars will reopen and that kind of stuff will resume?
Full capacity that's been listed is June 15th, which I think at that point they're feeling like the majority of people who want to get vaccinated will at that point have had an opportunity to be vaccinated. So we'll have, kind of the 4th of July and through the end of the year, and hopefully have kind of a holiday rush into the bars and restaurants. That's what we're hoping for. Is that exactly going to happen the way it did in 2019? I don't know. I think we'll still have a little bit of a lag as people get back into the habit of going to bars and restaurants, right? I think, for better or for worse, we are creatures of habit. And I think a lot of people really have gotten used to, I cook at home, I dine at home. If I'm going to make a cocktail, I do this from home. I am ordering my wine and spirits and my beer, it's getting sent to me, or I'm ordering it in from the different grocery chains. So, I'm optimistic that there's going to be a portion of the population that wants to go back out there and really support the bars and restaurants. We'll see how it shakes out, but I personally really excited to be able to sit down and have a drink with some friends.
I am too. Like, that is something, even in Nebraska, and we've been slowly, like, for example, when I go to like hockey's still going, our pickup league, and the bar in the rink is still allowed to be open. So it hasn't been like totally shut down. But it's so interesting when you talked about the pivot, right? And kind of having to pivot to different sectors. I imagine, though, first of all, just the decision to, do we pivot, because how long is this going to last? And it just kept feeling like last year, it was like, okay, no, we're going to be good. We're going to be going back. We're going to be going back. And it just kept being extended. So maybe like talk us through, I'm really interested to hear about the pivot to the different sector. And then like, when did you finally just like pull the pin and be like, okay, we need to do it. This is time. This isn't going back to normal anytime soon.
Sure. I mean, so first off, LibDib is a startup alcohol distributor, which is, that in and of itself is kind of an oxymoron. The other, our main competitors have been around since the late 1800s, right? I mean, Young's Market, which was just bought by Republic National. I mean, they were founded in, I think, like 1870s is when Young's Market was initially founded, right? So, Southern Glazers, Wine and Spirits, similar story, right? Kind of turn of the century is when they got started. So you're dealing with companies that have a lot of history. And when we come in and we say, well, the company is, 4 or 5 years old, it's just like completely alien to, the rest of our competitive landscape. So we just out of necessity had already been looking into some of these online channels as a path of business. So it wasn't completely new. And we actually, I would say, had a little bit of a first mover advantage within that space. And the way that we talk about the industry is we talk about the on-premise, which is bars and restaurants. We talk about the off-premise, which is independent retailers and your grocery chains. And then we talk about e-premise. And e-premise is all of these online sites, online stores that have been popping up. And that was how we divided up our revenue even before COVID. And then when this happened, it became pretty clear, because we're still very much in startup mode, that, hey, we need to keep the revenue coming in. So out of necessity, let's kind of go all in on this e-premise side of things and see what happens, because we don't know what this is going to look like. I mean, Mike, to your point, at first it was, well, this is going to be 2 weeks. Yeah. And then it was, this is going to be a month, right? And we forget that, right? Because now it's like, oh, it's just how it's been for a long time. But initially it was like, okay, 2 weeks, then a month, then one more month, then another month. And so we really were feeling the need to make this pivot. So it happened pretty quickly that it was the situation was we need to go, we need to invest and see what this looks like. And it's been a pretty wild ride. We've been able to do, through these online partners, some really unique offerings. So in addition to, kind of just the traditional, I'll say kind of standard offerings that a lot of our tequila, mezcal, whiskey producers provide, we've also started doing a lot more like single barrel expressions. So this is, for those who don't know, this is where, at a distiller, they're actually going and selling a single barrel. So the retailer will go and buy barrel 327, and barrel 327 is going to XYZ liquor store, and that's theirs. And sometimes they'll actually even send the barrel with the pallet of cases that it's coming with. So we did a lot of barrel picks last year, and that's actually turned into something that we think is going to continue to be a big piece of business for us going forward.
Cody, why? What made that shift work that maybe hadn't worked before?
Well, so there's a couple things there. One, you've got to have the demand from we call them accounts, but from the retailers, right? It's got to be something that they're looking for. And I think there was a sense that, hey, if I get this really esoteric barrel, which, could be 60 cases, 40 to 60 cases of product. And if it doesn't resonate with consumers, now I'm stuck with, maybe 50 cases or 37 cases of something. And what do I do with this now? What we saw last year was that, basically bourbon didn't slow down at all, even through the summer months, which was very unusual and kind of shocking. And I think a lot of the retailers responded to that and said, well, if people are just going to keep buying whiskey and this is really going to be a big driver, let's go out there. Let's try to find something unique, find something different. So I think that was a big component of it, was response from the consumers and response from the retailers. And then, from a logistics standpoint, for us, it's really attractive because it's a larger order. We're shipping, an entire pallet as opposed to shipping some smaller shipments. We can dive into a little bit about when we would ship those smaller cases, but it's nice. It's a pallet with the barrel on it, and we can just send that out kind of as one full unit to that given retailer.
And who is the retailer in this case for you? Like who's actually selling this? Because I think we got the impression in a lot of cases everybody was closed. So where were they? Were they essential? Was it Target? I mean, so who was selling these?
Yeah, so this depended state by state. But I know in California, in Florida, in New York, and Illinois, I know at least in those 4 markets, I would have to check for other states, but at least in those 4, liquor stores were deemed an essential business. So that's worth a good laugh, if nothing else. So they actually were staying open during this time. And then we also had grocery chains. Now, with barrel picks, you typically don't see those happening for grocery stores. Sometimes you might have more like a regional grocer that might do a barrel pick at one location. But a lot of times the barrel picks are coming into an independent liquor store. It's a family-owned establishment. Those are the folks who are going to be doing this type of business.
What about some of the larger, we were down in Texas last weekend, and of course they've got some big grocery store size liquor stores.
Yeah.
Would that be another location where people are coming in, they may know the staff there, we grabbed somebody who looked like they knew what they're talking about, said, hey, what do you got? We're here. We're out of town. Is it
Exactly.
that kind of deal that's making that kind of thing work? And then they can recommend, hey, we've got this special barrel, because I think people they were looking for something different, right? During the pandemic. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, that's what look, so much of our, someone's day is I wake up, I go to my office, I sit in front of my computer. I think we found a lot of people were just dying for any kind of variety. Just please, just anything that can break up the monotony of the day here. I think that really was how a lot of folks were feeling there. It's been a really successful piece of the business now for us. And yes, in California and a lot of these other states, that's the scenario. It's these larger independents that are going to be able to support this kind of thing. We do have the occasional smaller bottle shop that maybe like 2 smaller bottle shops will like split. They'll say, hey, we can't take all 40 cases, but we can take 20 cases. And
good catch.
That was a great catch.
Oh, you know what? We're going to need to, when you did that, it switched your microphone over to your camera mic now. So just go down to the settings in StreamYard and turn that back over so we get good.
I'll tee up a question for you while you're doing that. But okay, so that seemed to me like, I think you were listing those 3 kind of revenue sources, right? I think you called them on-prem, off-prem, and then like the e-commerce. So that what you just described, is that more of that off-prem kind of middle revenue source? And so kind of that's the grocery stores, the liquor stores, getting it there. Did they? I'm really curious about this, because like I feel like all consumption of everyone I knew went drastically up. So I know you said like bourbon remained consistent through the summer, but like overall, were sales a lot higher in that middle revenue tier?
Yeah. Are we good on this? I just want to make sure.
Not yet. No. It somehow make sure it's plugged in the back And I can edit this part. It's not a big deal, Cody. Let's get that. Well, it'll take a second for it to switch over and then go down to the audio settings in StreamYard and just make sure it says the ATR 2100 is the mic.
Okay. How about
there
now?
we go. Yeah.
There we go. We're back.
All right.
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
Did you hear the question?
Yeah, sorry. Could you repeat the question? I just want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's work. That'll be perfect for the editing anyway. So, you talked about the three sources, right? Kind of the on-prem bars. Then you have the middle tier, which is like the restaurants, and then you have like the middle is like your liquor stores, your grocery stores, and then you have your E side of things. So for that middle kind of tier for liquor stores, grocery stores, from the outsider's perspective, it feel like it just took off, like sales were through the roof. Is that true, or was that just kind of a perception from all of us being home because everyone's taking Instagram photos of them day drinking all day, and we just it seemed like people were drinking more? Like, were the numbers actually in alignment with being high last year?
No, there's definitely an element of truth to that. So, if you look at overall volume, so if you look at adding up on-prem, off-prem, e-prem, and you kind of look at what the overall volume was, overall volume was up. It wasn't up by much, and it depends on the month that you look at. So as we got towards the end of the year, October, November, December last year, there it started to actually fall below what we would normally see for kind of total volume. But there were definitely, into, May and June, for example, people were buying more booze than they historically had. Now, again, because it was really just concentrated on the liquor stores, the grocery stores, I think it felt that way. It felt like, wow, everyone is just drinking all the time right now.
Yeah, right.
But you had a lot of folks who normally maybe they would go and grab a beer with their buddies after work on a Wednesday night or Thursday night. And that wasn't happening. So that was getting supplemented in a lot of cases in this off-premise channel. So, now people are looking at the numbers. They're like, well, year-on-year off-premise is really lagging behind. It's like, well, yeah, of course now they're, they just had, the entire half of the consumption model wasn't really online at all. So I think things will, quote unquote, normalize a little bit this year. And then we'll get back on track a little bit. I will say that the e-premise side of the business, that changed a lot. And I think that, has been a kind of a smaller portion of the industry, but over these coming years, we're just going to see that continue to grow.
Cody, blow that out a little bit, because I'm not sure I fully understand when we talk about the E side of things. Can you give us a little background on that?
I agree. I didn't even know that existed for this side.
Yeah, let's just talk about it. Yeah.
So I can name a couple things, and I can explain a couple things. So if you've ever gone to a distiller's page, and I'm specifically going to talk about distilled spirits now, the laws around beer and wine are different and favor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so favor their ability to actually send product direct to consumer. So, for example, if I was here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, or I was in a winery up in Napa, my ability to send product direct to consumer is very different from a distiller who, by and large, cannot do that. But that winery can actually send products, could send a case to consumers across state lines. Not something you can do with distilled spirits.
And that's prohibition. That's still hangover from the prohibition era, right? Here in the United States.
That's hangover from it's 1933. Yeah. We need tax revenue.
Right.
We're going to legalize alcohol, and here's this system we're going to put together. And I mean, truthfully, for I'll call it 60 or 70 years till about 2000. I mean, this worked. I mean, the reality is the system did work, and it eliminated a lot of the pre-prohibition issues that were in place. Now, where it has struggled is since this little thing called the internet came along, which kind of upended a whole bunch of different industries. So that's a piece of it. When we talk about e-premise and who we sell to, a couple of names that I can throw out there that you may or may not have heard of. So Flaviar would be one. Tasters Club is another. Cask and Barrel is kind of a separate opportunity. We'll talk about that. Like Speakeasy Co. is another company that's playing in this space. Caskers, Cask Cartel, So a lot of these are subscription-based clubs where you as a consumer are subscribing to, from a legal standpoint, what is a marketing company. And this marketing company works with retailers in all these different states to send you bottles. And that could be a spirit of the month. So it could vary, between a bunch of different spirits. Could be a whiskey of the month, and it's specifically focused on whiskey. Or if you actually go and look at Flaviar, that's probably, I think what they're doing is one of the most interesting things that's out there right now. They have these, pretty high quality glass 50 ml vials, and you can actually taste test 3 50 mLs of different product. And then if you're interested, actually buy the 750 of the product from there. So there's a lot of different scenarios around what this looks like. So that piece of it is, I would say, one. The second one that I'll highlight is if you ever go to, Home Gadget Geeks distillery when that gets opened up, the Home Gadget Geek bourbon, right?
That would be so great. By the way, you just made my day.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Let's talk. I know a couple of people. So what that would look like is you'd have, your homepage, your about page, but you might have a shop page. Well, if we're selling socks, your shop page can just link to Shopify, or you can kind of own that shop page, and it's no big deal. In the alcohol industry, again, going back to a lot of the regulations around the 3-tier system, you cannot have a shop page where consumers are placing orders directly with you. What you can have is a marketing company who has branded a shop page that looks very similar to your website. So similar that unless a consumer was really paying attention to the URL, they wouldn't even realize they were on a different page and on a different site. And that will allow them to place an order. That order to the consumer looks like it's going to Home Gadget Geeks, but it's not. The order is going to a liquor store in their area, and then that liquor store is going to be fulfilling that order for them. And so that bottle has now gone from you, Home Gadget Geeks Distillery. It's gone through a distributor like LibDib. It's now gone to a retailer, and that retailer is now fulfilling it. But the consumer experience is much more seamless. They're not seeing that whole back end.
Yeah, it kind of pulls together the marketplace locally in a way that works within the law, right? So not and then connecting the liquor store to the individual, which traditionally even liquor stores didn't really take advantage of the internet in that kind of way, right? Do you feel like the average liquor the average liquor store never really sold online very well, did they?
It's a great point, and I would say they didn't. They largely didn't. Part of that, there's some unique laws kind of state by state around this. Right. So I'll pick on Colorado, for example. Colorado has a law where if you are a off-premise liquor store, you can only deliver within a certain radius. And I think it's only, within like maybe a mile or two of your location can you actually deliver. So, if you're in Denver, okay, maybe you can cover portions of Denver. But if you're in, even in, Boulder, or if you're in Fort Collins, or, you're a liquor store in Longmont, you're not going to be able to really hit that many people because, we start to get a little bit more spread out. So it isn't something that I think historically a lot of liquor stores focused on. I think last year was a great opportunity for them to shift into that. And we saw a lot of them really start to open up their own barrel programs that they were doing, consumer tasting clubs that they were doing, kind of running through these liquor stores to be able to drive online traffic and interest.
Well, I'm sure putting a little bit of a Home Gadget Geeks, twist on it, they've got to love any sort of extra drive they can get to online orders just from the data and demographics information they get from customers, right? Because it's really hard to track who's going into liquor stores all across the country and buying your product. But once you start getting direct orders, even though it's not going to that marketing company can turn it, they know where that order came from. They can gather some data. That's got to be changing the game a little bit for some of these people who didn't have access to that kind of data before.
Yeah, changes the game for the liquor store, and it also changes the game for the brand. It is not uncommon. It's something that we heard from folks all the time. Hey, I am signed up with this more traditional distributor. I have no idea where my product's actually being sold. Like I get this depletion report, but it's lagging sometimes a month or 2 months or I get it quarterly. So it's sort of like, this 3-month lag on where's my product actually being sold? Who are these consumers that are going in? What price point is the retailer setting on my product for this? So with the online side, you can get that data, to your point, a lot quicker. And that I think is really going to change the game around how quickly we're able to see new spirits brands come into the market and really get started.
Yeah, to be honest, I hadn't really thought about industries that haven't had access to that data for this long. We just take it for granted that every single, retailer has access to all, all that kind of data, right? The metrics. You forget that some of these who have been restricted from selling online, that's new to them. And I'm sure they're only starting now to realize how to use that up-to-date data.
Mm-hmm. Cody, when we think about a company like Jim Beam or Jack Daniels at the gigantic level, right? They would probably even have less, or maybe that's different. They're selling in grocery stores. They have distributors, but were they lacking? And then let me tag on to that. There's in the cigar industry, there has been a direct consumer model that has taken place, and now these big brands can get some of that data. Is that happening in the spirit world too, where now I maybe can get Jack Daniels direct and order it that way? I'm not saying I do, because I never would.
Right.
But just as an example, is that happening as well?
So it's a great question. It's not a piece of the business that LibDib that we see, that I see kind of day to day. We're focused on small to medium sized wineries and distilleries. A brand like a Jack Daniels, they are such a well-oiled machine to operate within the guardrails that have been set up, that any sort of deviation for them is it completely throws off everything that they're doing. So are there opportunities for them to start to dip their toes into the water on this? I think yes. I think it's going to have to be someone at Brown-Forman, who owns Jack Daniels, that's going to need to come in and really have a vision for what is this going to look like and how do we realistically roll this out? A brand like that certainly could take advantage, but again, they're so focused on kind of the way the system is currently operating. Yeah. It's going to be really, you're turning the Titanic with something like that.
Well, it's a system that's worked and it's working. I think it probably still continued to work during the pandemic. And there's probably a lot of thoughts of like, maybe we don't need that. There were some things that changed from a delivery mechanism. There were some new things that were allowed. I don't know anything about them. I'm hoping you do. What changed? And is that because all of a sudden you could get delivery?
Yeah.
Right. So what was it that changed? And is it going to stay around? Is that kind of stuff going to be allowed to continue to go on post pandemic?
There's a few things that changed. So delivery opened up across a lot of different states. Probably from a tech standpoint, most notably Drizzly was acquired by Uber. So for those who don't know, Drizzly is an alcohol delivery app. It was oftentimes referred to as Uber for alcohol. So it was sort of a natural progression. They basically had gotten to the point where they needed someone like an Uber to come in and provide additional capital for them to be able to scale. They had, gone out on their own, and I've spoken with the founders there. They had done a really, I think, phenomenal job working within the 3-tier system and allowing this kind of last leg delivery from the retailer to the consumer. Where I think they struggled was just in how much they were able to scale, number one, and number two, and the founders will tell you this, even up until last year and even to this day, their number one issue was people not knowing that it was legal for them to order alcohol online and that they could have it delivered. It was their number one issue. They had multiple blog posts about it every month. They were just constantly hammering this home. You can do this. Yes, it's legal. Yes, it's legal. Yes, it's legal. And it was just something that it's been so ingrained, I think, in the psyche for a lot of people that, well, I have to go to the store and I have to, buy it this way. And that was a hurdle for them. They really had to work and overcome. So that piece of it has certainly changed. Home delivery for the off-premise. The other thing that changed, which was opened up largely to try and help the bars and restaurants, was cocktails to go. Again, something that varied state by state, looked a little bit different depending on what market you were in. In Louisiana, notably, they had this already, and they actually turned it off for a little bit because they wanted to try and keep people from gathering in big crowds. So they were trying to get away from that. That, I think, without a doubt, is going to continue. What that will look like, I think, is going to be a little bit different in terms of what's offered. I think that's where something like the hard seltzers, right? So tequila seltzer that we were talking about before we hopped on here, those kinds of things, I think we'll see a really big play in something like a small Mexican restaurant that's looking to have something easy that they can add on to the order, right? It's not necessarily that I'm having to make a margarita and then put it in a plastic cup and send you along on your way with that. But if I've got something kind of just ready to go, I can just add into the order, and it's a, $8 to $10 ring that adds to your tacos and quesadilla. Awesome. Great. I'm all for that. So I think there's a pretty interesting business opportunity, and there's been a lot of innovation on that side as well with the RTD space. And I think it ties into this last leg kind of delivery component as well.
I think that when you talk about, different regions of the country, so, at least here in Nebraska, I feel like the carry out margaritas and all that stuff was big over COVID. I know a lot of the Mexican restaurants especially were really good at that. At least in the circle that I've run in, Drizzly, like that concept, when you said they still have to hammer home that it's legal, I think that's still a struggle here, right? I think like it's slowly, I don't know if it's maybe just the different groups, different regions that kind of take it on faster or slower. Jim, I don't know. Do you, Drizzly wise, and like delivery to your home of alcohol, whereas, I think we both had margaritas to go at some point, during COVID from different restaurants around here. But the Drizzly thing, have you seen that around Omaha a lot?
I have not. Cody, I remember, I think you mentioned it on one of your podcasts on Shots of History. And I think you even did a special episode when that happened, or
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about that. And I remember thinking, yeah, I've never heard of that. Like, and that would be a problem. The kind of the educating the consumer piece could have been
right.
Cody, do you feel like the now that we're on the backside, I think, of the pandemic, let's hope so. And do you think those cocktails to go will go away? I mean, even though people can do them, the experience of a cocktail, and then one of the things I really like about you is that you're a cocktail guy. Like, you love your cocktails, and we do too here at the Collison House. So it's pretty great. Are those cocktails to go going to stay, even if they can stay? Are restaurants still going to sell them? Like, will still be a thing?
I think they will. I think that there's been enough demand for them that that we'll see them stick around. Do I think it will be as big as it was during COVID? Now, this is one man's perspective. I don't. I think there's going to be a little bit of a pullback. But I still think you're going to see people who, they're getting, a burrito and the quesadilla to go, and they're going to get a margarita to go with it. And, we've in Texas, again, before COVID, the laws were more relaxed. They were able to do this. So I think it's something that we'll continue to see moving forward.
The one question, okay, so going back to, you have me intrigued. You were talking about kind of this subscription model, right?
Yeah.
Especially for spirits. So you have these, boxes. I think, we've seen this in every single industry where you can get a subscription box. And, my take on these I'm a non-marketing guy, right? My always big take is it provides a really good opportunity for maybe a smaller brand company to get into one of these subscription boxes and kind of get discovered by a group of people, right? It's, if you're a part of a wine club, it's, man, I really liked last month's, let's order a box of that. Right. And let's go do that. Or, even there's like gadget ones, there's everything, dog brands. And I think people find something and they like it and they continue to buy it. So what is, I guess, the next phase for the customer that these spirit companies want you to take? Because I'm imagining, you mentioned it's really hard to do direct to consumer. So if I do the subscription box, I find that tequila that you have in your hand, it's from California. And then it's like, well, now what do I do? Right. Cause like I found it. I love it. Is the next phase to try and find more of a way to get this directly into my hands when I want it? If I can't go to my local liquor store and find it, that's got to be a challenge because those boxes are nationwide. There's probably not any geographic restrictions, but yet the distribution is going to be maybe a little bit limited, right? Especially on spirits.
Yeah. And so this is another interesting part of kind of the legal angle with all of this is that the ability for a distiller or an importer to ship to you across state lines is very limited. There are currently more flexible regulations around retailers being able to ship to you across state lines. So, for example,
oh, really? So there is a difference there between
there is a
like
difference.
The Lucas Liquors of the world and the actual distiller. Okay, interesting.
Correct. So the retailer itself could potentially ship to you, and maybe it's not kosher to say this. We know for a fact that there are states that on paper don't allow these kinds of shipments where this is happening, where shipments are going in, and there are other states, like I know for a fact, California and Florida, for example, have reciprocity. So you can have a Florida retailer ship product to a California consumer. And I know this, my mom actually had this done. I'm going to out her on this one. She wanted to make some limoncello. And this was during the pandemic. She couldn't find Everclear anywhere. She needed like high proof Everclear to be able to use as the base of this limoncello. There's a retailer down in Florida who had it and was able to send her the handful of bottles that she needed. So the retailer could do that, even if the distributor or the supplier of the product cannot. So there was actually a case last year around was the state of Tennessee versus somebody. I'm forgetting who the versus was. It wasn't versus the U.S., but it was another group. And there was a legal hearing about this around what are the rights of a retailer to be able to send across state lines. So it's an evolving space right now, what that's going to look like. And then also right now, Discus, which is the distilled spirits or Distilled Institute Council of the United States, or Distillers. I'm going to butcher that. I'm so sorry for my friends at Discus. I'm butchering your acronym. Close enough. Yeah. It's the body of distillers that are going and, kind of advocating for them. They are looking to have similar, kind of open rules the same way that wineries do in their ability to kind of ship. And, again, it's something where, and I think Mike, you mentioned this earlier, like, man, there's all these spirits brands popping up. Like they're everywhere. It seems like they just keep coming. That is something that the wine industry really felt when they opened up the ability to ship direct to consumer was, oh, wow, this just got a lot more competitive overnight, like in a really big way. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, it's a little bit harder to get in, but if you get in, now you can get a little bit more of a rhythm going with your product. If you've got more of the setup that the wineries have right now, I would say you're just always going to be constantly fighting this churn. A lot of times, and maybe kind of curious to see what your guys' thoughts are on this. I know for wine, I'll maybe try one brand, and then the next bottle of wine that I'm trying is going to be from another part of the country, another part of that region. I'm sort of bouncing from winery to winery. When you look at spirits, historically, it's been, I'm a Jack drinker, right? I drink Absolute. I drink Beefeater, right? Like you've got kind of these folks who are honed in on the specific brands. There's a little bit more loyalty there. And opening this up is just going to kind of further allow people to try these different unique products that are coming into the market. And so I think some of these bigger suppliers, I think, will benefit in some ways, but I think it will definitely open up the maybe not overnight a big competitor, but a lot of the sort of nibbling at the heels of a brand like a Jack Daniel's.
Seems like a win-win for the consumer, though. It seems like, more competition probably drives prices down a little bit, more variation, right? I don't know. It could affect quality, I'm sure, at some point, or distribution. But, for the consumer, it doesn't seem at first blush like it would be too bad.
But don't,
Yeah.
Mike, that's kind of cyclical in nature, right? I mean, you get more competitors, prices come down, not everybody survives. You get a few brands that go cutthroat, make it. Then there's a few left. They become the mega brands. Their prices go up. That opens up the cycle for the new ones to come in and undercut them. It's kind of this constant cycle that we're going through on those prices. Cody, when you said opens up competition, and I'm thinking about spirits trailing beer in this because the craft beer movement and the kind of the opening of that really challenged. I'm a Bud guy, or I'm a Coors guy, or I'm a Miller guy, right? Especially here in the United States. Now you're not hearing that. I mean, we kind of buy beer. Mike, I buy beer like you buy wine. I kind of go in like, what looks good, or what's on sale that looks good, right?
Yep.
Type deal. And so I think maybe spirits are coming up on that same, where all of a sudden now with the having so many different options this summer alone, I must have tried 20 different bourbons. Like it was just, and we talked about, what's funny is, my kids are your age, and Mike too. And so I'd be talking to my kids like, oh, you got to try this. Right. So we'd try that. And so now I've got a bunch of, if you ask me, I'm still a Jefferson's guy. Like that's still my all-time favorite, my default. That's what I go with.
That's a good one.
I love the whole line. I mean, the thing works for me, but that doesn't mean I'm not buying Old Forester for certain occasions. Doesn't mean I'm, there are, we got a Woodford in there from time to time. We try different bourbons. So is that consistent? Is my view of spirits consistent? Is that starting to happen in that space as well, where everybody's getting a little more broad?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of this is also a little generational. Certainly the millennial, and I think the oldest Gen Zs are 24-ish, something like that. So they're, just now coming of legal drinking age.
Yeah.
Those drinking patterns and how quickly I would say they deviate away from just buying your comfort brands, the large brands that folks know, that is really going to drive what the innovation looks like on this quite a bit as well. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see somewhat similar to what, craft beer did to the kind of more traditional established beer industry. We've seen that with wine, and we're going to see it with spirits coming forward too. I think it's an apt analogy.
Well, look what Jim Beam has done to innovate on their product. Now you have every flavor of Jim Beam imaginable, that you can imagine. And it's just, we're even seeing some of the bigger ones start to innovate, thinking, okay, what is, I've got an apple and a cherry, and I need to have a vanilla in there, and some, a whole bunch of other flavors. And now we're seeing, even beer start to become, we get into the seltzers, start. It's crazy the selection we have right now.
That's a whole other rabbit hole that we can go down with seltzers.
Is that gonna last, Cody? Is this seltzer thing is it here to stay?
It's here to stay. I don't know. You guys can tell me about cryptocurrency. I can tell you that seltzers and canned cocktails, they are here to stay for sure. 100%. And for a few reasons. The biggest, I think, just being that this is something where the larger brands can get volume fast. And there's already been a bill introduced to have spirits and wine that are sold in an RTD can taxed at the same rate that a malt-based hard seltzer is taxed at. So just without getting into all the details, there's your tax rate on beer and malt-based products. You've got a tax rate for wine and wine fermented products, and then you have a tax rate on distilled spirits. Distilled spirits are taxed at the highest rate. If this ends up going through and they're able to have the same functional federal state excise tax rates as these malt-based hard seltzers, that will be what these brands prioritize. You know, you're going to see, you know, a whiskey sour RTD. You're going to see a tequila soda, tequila lime, tequila grapefruit. These things are going to become very, very prevalent. And I think that there is also, in line with this real desire, again, driven by probably the younger millennials, Gen Z age range.
This guy down here.
That guy right there, that one. Those folks are really looking for a product where they can drink and still feel healthy. And they can drink and feel like, well, it's not that bad. It's only 100 calories. You know, there's that element. And that has now become, as where that might have been more of a niche within the market, that is now more of a widespread attitude that I think folks are adopting. So yeah, 100%. This is here to stay. Very bullish on seltzers and then canned RTDs. There's a lot of really interesting things coming onto the market.
And that you would say those are canned cocktails, right? Was that what you would say?
Yeah. So there's seltzers, which are typically going to be a malt base. You can also have a spirits-based RTD. And RTD, again, stands for ready to drink. So technically, a can of Coke is an RTD. We don't normally talk about it that way, but anything that's in a can like that is an RTD. So you'll see probably these, like wine, for example, like wine in a can, wine in an RTD. I think you'll continue to see this. And then we're going to start to see kind of these probably simple cocktails. You might see like an old fashioned, a Manhattan. And there's already some of those products out there that are in a 750 format that, you know, are presented that way. So I think that we're just going to continue to see this go into kind of the single serve on the go format for folks. It's not going anywhere.
I remember the first time I tried one of those, I was actually down in Kansas City at my parents' house, and Boulevard has their Fling series. So they have their Fling Mojito, they have a Mule, they have a Margarita in all those cans, right? The RTD cans. And, you know, it was kind of an interesting way, like, you know, it had been a while since I had a Mule, couldn't remember if I liked him. Now, not the way like, oh, this is a good Mule, but just like, you know, taste it. And I was like, wow, okay, not bad, number one. And it's super convenient, right? Pack them up. We took them out when we went to a theater on the park thing or on the lawn where you can kind of sit out and you pack a cooler and you watch some music, things like that. And it's just so easy. And especially I think for people who are already into those types of drinks, I'm a beer and wine guy. So really didn't, you know, but for people who are into that and like, oh man, a nice, easy way. I agree. I saw that. I'm like, this has got to be massive.
And Mike, that's a great point, right? Like beer kind of had a corner on this market, because they were, you know, historically, they've been the ones who have been canning things. Their product came in a can, came in a 6-pack or, you know, maybe a variety pack, a 4-pack or something of that nature. But really, you didn't see a lot of canned wines. You didn't see a lot of canned spirits at all. So beer has really capitalized on this. And, you know, I know a couple of brands right now who are talking to large concert venues. They're talking to Major League Baseball parks. Right. I mean, you know, you think about all of these places where beer is kind of the canned thing that you would think to go to. And all of a sudden there's an opportunity now that it could be beer, or you could have this other option. So, if I was placing bets, this is an area I'd expect to see some growth.
I think of like tailgating, right? I'm thinking of all the events where you pack a cooler, it's quick and easy, and you want enough variation for everyone in your party. So you're not going to pack 12 big, you know, bottles of liquor. You might if you have the room, but if you're on the go tailgate in small space, you know, pack a bunch of these cans, easy to go, right? You got variety, ease. You don't have the glass bottles clinking around. So
I was going to say,
it makes it easy.
Depends on the kind of tailgate you're having as to whether or not you're bringing the 12 full size handles, but you know,
very true. Very true.
Cody, I think there is also a desire. The younger generation likes the more cocktail experience. It's just it's different than just a beer or just just have a whiskey neat. It's kind of a different kind of experience. One of the things I've appreciated over, I think 2019 and 2020 on Shots of History, you spent a bunch of time talking to bartenders and you guys talked cocktails. That was one of the reasons I kept listening. was because I just really love cocktails. What's the state of the cocktail industry as we think? Did COVID decimate it? Are we coming back when we head back into bars? Are we going to see there had been a movement towards really good custom cocktails right before COVID hit, right? I mean, we're getting some signature drinks that you could only get in certain places. We had people developing their own custom cocktails that they were known for, right? Is that going to come back? Was that damaged in any way? Talk a little bit about the cocktail space.
Yeah. It was damaged. And going back to what, kind of March and April looked like last year, about a year ago, I mean, I was getting calls from, brand ambassadors who were saying, hey, I need you to cancel the order to this bar, this restaurant. I just drove by there. And I mean, they're basically just selling everything for parts. Like they're selling the sink, they're selling the fridge. They're just trying to get out the door so they can make one more month's rent payment. And, that was the situation for some of these spots. I think most folks know it's maybe not a super high margin business, right? But I mean, if you're operating at, 10% or 12%, that's like, you're doing good, right? I mean, a lot of bars and restaurants are, operating on very, very thin margins. And so losing 2-3 months worth of revenue was devastating to a lot of folks. So definitely there's been, unfortunately, a lot of, bars and restaurants that have had to close during this time. And there's been a few kind of historic spots. I'm thinking of a couple in New York City that had to close. And you mentioned, on my podcast just recently, I was talking to some bartenders. Souther Teague had, expanded from just Amoria Margot, which is just an iconic spot in New York. It used to be a storage closet as part of another restaurant, and he sort of revamped it and turned it into a bar. So it's like 240 square feet. It's this tiny little space. It's like this super intimate thing, right? Which of course now you think of a small intimate space. That's maybe not the first place that people are going to want to go. And so he had actually expanded from Amoria Margot to having 5 different locations around New York. And he's back to just having Amoria Margot. The other 4 have shuttered. And the just heartbreaking story that him and many other bartenders have echoed, and bar managers and bar owners have echoed, was going to the landlord and saying, can we work something out? Can we extend the lease? Can I get some forgiveness now? And we'll extend the lease. And, many landlords just saying, I'm not in the business of not collecting rent. And Souther's point was, well, if you do this, I'm not in business. You will not collect anything from me if this is how this plays out. So I think that, Souther, and then Kevin, who was also on that podcast, I'll give him a shout out, Kevin Diedrich, who had one of my favorite spots in San Francisco. They both pointed out that this is not a reopening, like it is a grand opening. And they made the joke, Eater a lot of times will say, oh, the top 10 bars that are coming online in, July or March or August. And it's like all these little red dots. And their joke was, well, what are you just going to, you just gonna have one big red dot for the entire city of San Francisco, city of New York. And it's a good point, right? I mean, this is a grand opening again for these guys. I mean, are people going to go back to the place they went to before COVID, or are they gonna look to try a new spot? Because there has been some new investment in this space, right? People have been able to get really phenomenally set up, hospitality spaces at a discount. And there have been some more institutional folks who've gone in, and look, they have every right. They've got the funds to do so, and they're able to capitalize on this opportunity. It'll be interesting to see, what this looks like for a lot of the smaller players. Craft cocktails are not going anywhere. I think you're still going to be able to go in and see that, this isn't like what we had where we went from World War I into Prohibition, and, it sort of decimated like a generation of great bartenders. is this a step back and a a kick in the teeth? Absolutely, it has been. And it's so just for me personally as a PSA, I'm going out and trying to support the bars and restaurants that are just kind of locally here in my area. I would encourage folks to do the same. I think the thing that gives me optimism about where this is headed is that at the end of the day, we are still social creatures. We want to go out and be with people and interact with other people. And we also seek new, interesting experiences, something that we can't get every day. And the great bars that I know are the bars that deliver not only a great drink, but also have created a space that is inviting and unique. And you walk in and you're transported in some way. And I think that those spaces will still exist. And so I'm optimistic that we'll be able to recover, but I have no delusions. This is not going to be an overnight, bounce back. It's definitely going to be a process now.
Do you think we'll see, there was just an explosion of craft and custom cocktails being made right before this happened. Do you think that'll just slowly work its way back in, or will it take a bunch of time for that to kind of come back?
Yeah, no, I think you'll hopefully by the end of the year that'll come back.
Okay.
That's my hope. I think initially when a lot of these bars, and it might be that 2022 is really where we get back into the swing of that. Again, it was a kick in the teeth, but the culture is still there. It's alive and well. So
you need another drink.
maybe. I think that there's I think that a lot of the bars and restaurants when they first open are going to be very cost sensitive and really looking at what their bottom line is. So to that end, they will probably go towards the comfort brands, the brands that are able to sell in bulk, and really kind of use that to kind of get the ball rolling again and be able to kind of get back up on their feet. As that sort of proves itself out, I think we'll start to see, yeah, sure, we can buy a case of this, dark cherry liqueur and kind of test around with that, right? And then the ability to start to play around with this a little bit more, I think will come back.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering. We're kind of wondering. I said interesting and wondering in the same word. Kind of wondering. There is going to be such a high demand for travel this summer. Like I'm already hearing, airlines are starting to ramp up seriously, thinking, okay, we have to get ready. It's tough to find a bed and breakfast on the East Coast. Some part of it is because some of them closed, but the other part is hotels have such availability, but that are filling up fast, like they are. And I'm kind of wondering if we may see this explosion in the September timeframe of all of a sudden, everybody just, kind of like what we're seeing with lumber, where, the price of lumber right now is 3 times what it should be. But I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see that in travel, hospitality, and then in this space as well. Have we seen any inflation in this market, the beer, spirits, wine? Have prices gone up during this time, or have they gone down?
Yeah, I think they've been able to stay pretty much consistent. There were I'll give you a sense on, there were some interesting issues, and this actually ties into another legal ruling that has happened over this last period of time. So a brand like Jack Daniel's, Jose Cuervo, Beefeater Gin, right? They sell to consumers what you and I, what we all see when we go to the store is a 750 format, 750 milliliters. Well, the bars and restaurants for these brands that are really moving constantly, they do not buy 750s. They buy liters, particularly with vodka. It's additional pour for them. It's a single bottle that they use. Like it makes economic sense to have these liters. Well, when all of a sudden there was no ability to sell liters and there was this tremendous demand for 750 format, the price of glass and the availability of glass was all sorts of messed up. So there was at the beginning of all this definitely a real issue of like, okay, we need glass now, and we have no idea where we're going to get this glass from. So that was I would say would be our lumber scenario, was on the glass front. Where this ties in on the legal side and where this gets really interesting. So the TTB, which is the governing body that oversees a bunch of random things, but they also oversee alcohol. Earlier this year, have opened up the ability for a 700 ml format to be sold in the US. Now, why is that a big deal?
Yeah.
That's a big deal because the 700 ml format is the standard in Europe. It's the standard in Asia. It's the standard in, down in Australia. It's the standard in most of the world. It's really the US and India are the only two countries that work off of a 750. So if, our brand is, a brand is starting to do well, Home Gadget Geeks Distillery wants to go abroad, right? It would have been, hey, we've got our one bottling line and all of our machinery geared up for 750. And now we got to, reset it, recalibrate everything, put on the different bottles, the 700 bottles that are going to go overseas. Well, now if I just can have 700 and have this one consistent format for the world, that is, I think, a scenario that we're likely to see play out here. And so you mentioned, prices, what have prices done? That's where I think, consumers are going to get, be a little bit frustrated to see that the price of a 700 will stay consistent as it was when it was a 750. But I know that some of the bigger guys are looking to do this, to make the move to 700 and just streamline the glass contracts that they have and the bottling productions and everything. And make it kind of a global standard of a 700.
I always love hearing the supply chain, issues or improvements on any industry, like things you don't even think about, right? That switching down to a 700 could streamline that so much just because of international and everything. That's interesting. And it's also funny that they're going to bring that, the volume down to 700, but keep that price the same.
I swear when I was a kid, candy bars were bigger and now they're smaller. So this is not
Very
the only
possible.
place where this has happened.
And everyone's going to be a little bit buzzed when they do realize it for the first time. Like, I swear this thing used to be bigger, didn't these do 750s,
But it kind of makes sense. And it could go the other direction, or it could cause there's a price war where there's now economies of scale. So it's less for the manufacturers because they're doing it a little bit cheaper. Someone could decide, hey, I'm going to make a run at cornering this change.
Yeah.
And so that it could happen the other way as well. We always kind of think, they're going to keep the change. And you're like, well, there's some pretty savvy. This is still a pretty competitive market, and they're pretty savvy. There was also an aluminum issue here in the United States, right? Around that.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
That was a big one. So that impacted a lot of the breweries. It also impacted, I know, several folks who were trying to launch either a hard seltzer or they were trying to launch an RTD, and they just couldn't get the aluminum. The guys who were providing all the aluminum contracts were like, listen, I'm trying to get aluminum to Anheuser-Busch. I am not focused on your small RTD right now.
Yeah. They buy 15,000 spools of aluminum. You're needing one. Yeah. So we're gonna, you're gonna get that. Has that worked itself out? Are we back to a more normal level?
Yeah, more or less from what I've seen. I still every now and then, I think it's been a little bit since I've heard someone struggling to get aluminum. So I think that has more or less worked itself out. And I think the glass thing as well has worked itself out, and we'll kind of get back onto a normal path there.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about the glass deal, and aluminum doesn't exist in the United States. We have to import all aluminum that we have here has to be imported into the United States, and so that part made sense. We buy a lot of caffeine-free regular Coke. That is kind of that's what sits in the fridge. And when we're making rum and Cokes at night and some of those kinds of things or whatever, we want Coke, but we don't want caffeine. And so I buy okay, that was a a loser in the aluminum wars. Coke stopped making caffeine-free Coke. You could get it caffeine-free Diet Coke. You could get Diet Coke. You could get Coke. You could get lemon Coke and cherry Coke. You could not. There was not a can
Caffeine
of
free, yeah.
caffeine-free Coke, just regular caffeine to be had. And we finally had to look it up, and Coke had released a statement, and they're like, "Yeah, we're having trouble. We're having trouble with our aluminum distribution, and we shut that line down."
Yeah.
And that was enough, to get them through. But that was like, for us, that's one of our, rum and Coke is one of our cocktails of choice here at the Collison house. And so the kids were, no, we could buy regular Coke and some of those other kinds of things. But it's funny how that aluminum shortage affected us. And when we started finding it on the shelves again, we were trying to buy it
Like,
up.
yeah.
I'm trying to buy it up. Like, how many do I buy? Buy 50. And you're like, we don't need that many. But so caused some interesting, like, the supply chain shortages that it caused really had an interesting effect. Not just at restaurants, but all the way down kind of to the home levels too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say just one other bit on the change to a 700 ml that I'm super excited about is I think it will allow smaller brands to grow into the US, and also for some of our brands to more quickly and easily grow out into the rest of the world. They're not going to have these additional expenses in terms of bottling lines and production. So, and selfishly, again with LibDib, I'm really excited about that, because that means we get to potentially talk to some more interesting and exciting brands coming into the States.
Do you deal with direct to consumer at all, or are you guys at LibDib just primarily working, B2B?
So this is a good question. Okay, so just taking a step back, when we because we mentioned the 3-tier system, but for someone who maybe didn't hear our first conversation, when we talk about the 3-tier system here in the US, this is a legal system for how alcohol is sold, where it needs to go from the supplier or the producer to a licensed distributor, and then from that licensed distributor to a retailer. And again, that could be a bar, a restaurant, a liquor store, grocery chain, a hotel, an airport lounge, right? There's all sorts of different, skins that last tier can wear. What we as a licensed wholesaler, licensed distributor cannot do is sell direct to consumer. So we are only focused, Jim, to your point, on the B2B side of things. Do I think in the next 5 years that could change? I would not rule it out. I think that there's a lot of pieces of the beverage alcohol space that are being evaluated right now, and what a distributor's role is, kind of where they fit into this whole system is being reevaluated. And what does this look like? So
Brian asks a really good question from the chat room on this. He says, do you see a movement towards more unified policies then on alcohol throughout the US, or consistencies in fragmentation of these procedures? Is that kind of what you're foreshadowing here a little bit, Cody?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. So alcohol laws, similar to laws around real estate, similar to the laws around becoming a lawyer, right? You get licensed in your state. It's always been a state.
Anybody can be a lawyer, Cody. Anybody can be a lawyer.
Always the lawyer jabs. Come on. It's true. I mean, especially if I can do it.
Fair enough. It's always a state-driven licensing that you've seen and that we've always had. And actually, here's a potential angle to consider. So a lot of people don't know that the federal drinking age is not 21. 21 was established in large part because of MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Got a lot of political support to say, if you will raise the legal drinking age to 21, we encourage you to do that so that we will continue giving you your federal highway funding. And it was sort of this quid pro quo that happened that got all the states to kind of agree that 21 was going to be the legal drinking age. If something like this were going to happen, there would have to be some sort of similar dynamic for the laws to come to an equilibrium across the states. There's a lot of variations on what this looks like, from the tax rates that individual states charge to, you have states like a Utah or Pennsylvania, Virginia with distilled spirits. They do this as well, where the state itself owns the liquor store. So you're not going into Total Wine or Benny's in Illinois or Publix in Florida. You're going into the Utah state liquor store. And then you have a state like California, where we have all sorts of different retailers that can do this. And, I think that I still anticipate that there will be some discrepancies state by state on what this looks like. But I could see a path where maybe there's some sort of legal incentive for states to begin to unify. But it will be sort of, it'll look unified, but it's really all the states have just kind of agreed on this particular set of guidelines.
And what's interesting about that is you kind of talk about the history, right? And how we got here, right? All these laws are just kind of like left over and they've come along. And then you have an industry like the cannabis industry who's coming in, and they are getting to build their laws in this new age. And so I'm curious, do you think as cannabis starts to become legalized more and more places, the laws are, for, lack of a better term, current, right? Based off of current technologies that are out there. Is that going to force the alcohol industry, the laws around the alcohol industry to change a little bit?
Well, I can tell you that the alcohol industry is looking to influence the cannabis industry quite a bit. And has already done so. Yeah, has already done so.
In what ways?
In how it's regulated.
Okay.
So particularly, they're looking right now at having a very similar 3-tier system set up for the cannabis industry. That's really been the primary proposal at a federal level, is that would be the structure that we would have for this. Okay. One kind of larger company to maybe keep your eye on and see where their investment goes is Constellation Brands. Constellation, a subdivision of them, owns Corona beer. They also own a lot of different wineries. They own an enormous number of wineries. And so they have also invested pretty heavily in the CBD cannabis industry. They're doing a lot of business right now up in Canada with this. And they are, I would say, of the company, the major companies, they're kind of the one that's really taken this first mover step on trying to sort out what does this space look like. And it looks like they will be one of the companies that plays in both beverage alcohol and also kind of the CBD cannabis space.
I figured there had to be some connection there, because in my head it's like an either or thing. It's like a big competitor, right? Like, want to have a good time, like which vice are you going to choose, kind of thing, right? Like, it's just they seem to be competitors. So I assume that the big alcohol companies were going to be saying, hey, if we have to abide by these rules, you better bet you guys are going to have to too, right? Or we're just going to get right into that game too, right?
Yeah,
jump in and get involved.
And it's interesting because to date, we haven't seen them play out as competitors. Now, again, we're still so young and new in all of this that I think we don't really have enough data to make a conclusive, draw on what that's going to be. But to date, it's sort of been, I have my occasions for consuming cannabis, and I have my occasions for wine, for spirits, for beer. And there's some overlap there. But for most of the consumers that are partaking in both substances, they've kind of got, occasions for both of them, and they haven't really canceled each other out yet to this point. Again, we'll see what happens.
And this is coming from a Nebraska guy who it's not legal here. So it's not, people here haven't had to make that decision. If you're doing cannabis, you're doing it, in a way different setting than you're doing alcohol in, just because of the legality issues of it. So it'll be interesting to see, here even how that comes to play. But I could see, in, a long way down the road, us having the billboards and the Super Bowl ads for cannabis, just like, we're rating cannabis Super Bowl ads, just like we are, the big Budweiser commercials. So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting as that plays out, is if have those two industries become competitors, or have they all kind of conglomerated together?
Yeah. Yeah. It will be.
Well, and we haven't even talked, and we won't, but we haven't talked about the tobacco industry and in premium cigars. I've spent a bunch of time over the last couple of years hanging out with a little bit in that space, listening to what these guys are talking about as well. And that is another area of high regulation, and cigarettes and cigars are regulated differently, taxed differently. It's Cody, as you were talking a lot about this, it reminds me of that's some of the same arguments that are going on where premium tobacco gets much more leniency in this country than cigarettes. And so there's some battle going on to pull the premium cigar industry into that same. Of course, they're fighting it like crazy. But even some recent changes about flavor because of the vaping space.
Right,
Vaping has very quickly. Vaping has kind of changed the landscape, the smoking landscape, and so that's kind of added in. I'm a big fan of premium cigars and cocktails, and so those they don't take away; they actually augment. I've actually been surprised we haven't seen some of the bigger alcohol companies get into the cigar space in some ways. They for whatever reason they keep those. I think they keep those very separate. So, do you run into the cigar? I mean, in the space at all? Does that show up on your radar at all?
Yeah, I don't specifically. I'm not really a cigar smoker myself. I do think that you can get, and I'm sure they're just private label, and I don't think they own their own tobacco. But I do think that there are some Pappy Van Winkle cigars that you can get.
Yes, there are.
Along with Pappy Van Winkle T-shirts and maple syrup and chocolate bars.
Juggernaut. That company is a juggernaut in all those spaces, right? And that there aren't many though. There aren't many like that. I think there's some crossover when we think about individual cigars. There's maybe some crossover infusions. But it's been surprising that maybe we haven't seen a company, the parent company of Jack Daniels, or where they've gotten more interested in crossover in that space. Yeah. It seemed like it would make sense. There is some happening in there. Cody, as we kind of wrap this, anything that I didn't ask you, like that I should have, as we're thinking about heading into recovery, any other tidbit? This is always just so much fun to spend time talking with you about this. Yeah. We don't do this a lot, but it's great to have you on. You're like our industry correspondent here, so a pretty expert.
Yeah.
Anything else that we should know?
Oh gosh. I think we covered a lot of the key things. Good. I guess I would say, if you can, wherever it is that you're listening, just going out and supporting the bars and restaurants that are in your area. That's the biggest thing. They've been through hell. That is not an exaggeration to say that the last year has really been brutal for them. So going out, getting together with friends, I think is going to be really exciting. I guess maybe the final thing, I'm kind of curious maybe to hear from you guys on remote work, because that's something that we talk about at our company right now all the time. What's that going to look like? Our industry is very focused on meeting in person, shaking hands, sitting down, breaking bread, literally breaking bread with someone, and, kind of having this very intimate face-to-face interaction. And all of a sudden we realized, well, we don't have to do that. So is there a value to doing this, or what is that value, and what meeting constitutes now me flying out? And if I don't fly out, is that, does that mean that I don't feel good about the deal, or is it just, hey, what, why bother? Like where's that line going to be moving forward? That's something that we internally as a company are talking, and I'm sure companies all over the US are talking about right now. Where do we fall? So it's similar for you all, or?
A little bit. Yeah. So my company actually, it was very interesting. We had just broken ground a few months prior to COVID starting on our brand new massive headquarters, right? We had a bunch of disjointed buildings all across Omaha, and then they were building this nice big headquarters. And in the wake of you see companies like RFI or no, or REI, sorry. REI, the outdoor people, they had just built a headquarters. They decided not to move into it. They sold it. We kind of went the opposite way, and we've actually had a recent. So we're moving in next month, and the thing is, we expect people to be in the office. Now, we say you can still work from home if you need to for certain circumstances, but the overall thing from the top is that we are just a company that we work better in person. We don't need to. We worked really well remote. I mean, we kind of just did it naturally. It worked well, but our culture is all being together, which I thought was really interesting. If that's what you want from your company, to have the courage to actually say that when everyone's doing the opposite right now, I thought was pretty cool. But the same way as you, so I do a lot of mergers and acquisition stuff, and it's being in person, all of that it's a big deal. And in the wealth management space, what do you do with your clients when your clients are coming into your wealth advisor? We found those. So I talked to all of our advisors across the country, and probably I'd say 75% of them said our clients have loved just doing a Zoom meeting, not needing to come in, do a Zoom meeting. They said, can we just do this going forward? This works. There's a few that love the white glove experience, right? You're really high-end clients, but the average client has really enjoyed it. And the advisors who got onto that early have been like, man, well, do I need an office space? Like I could really do this from my home. And then it's like coming down to like, does your wealth advisor need a brick and mortar place for you to see them as legitimate is really the only final question here. Because the clients like to do Zoom. So it's been a very, very interesting time. But for us, we're going to be back in the office.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll go hybrid. And we were kind of hybrid before. And my job doesn't require me, this is what I do. I do this. And so it's great to be in person, but it's actually not as effective for me. Like I don't, great podcasts don't happen in person. They happen when we're doing this kind of thing. Yeah. I do think we'll get back to a fairly normal state of being around each other. It just is. We're kind of built that way as humans. It'll be slow and everybody's got to kind of come back to it in their own way. But Cody, I think businesses that do sales will come back much faster than everybody else. There's going to be, as soon as other salespeople hear that the other sales guy showed up in person and took them out to eat and bought them, right? It's game over. Like all this, it was so much nicer, blah, 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 right? It's gone. And you're going to have folks showing up because at the end of the day, a sale's a sale. And if the playing field's level because just nobody is traveling. So yeah, it kind of works, right? But once we can travel again, we're going to want to go shake hands and kiss babies. Like that's how deals are closed, right?
Yeah.
But especially the big ones. So I don't think, I don't see us, it'll never be what it was. It'll just be different, but very similar, I think, in a lot of ways. Yeah. Cody, as we wrap this today, after work was done, I was kind of thinking, it'd be nice between 5 and 6 to enjoy. We call them candles here because I don't want to get kicked off Facebook or YouTube for it. But grabbed a cigar, went outside, and I made a cocktail that I'd never done before. So we found Buffalo Trace Cream, which is
the bourbon cream.
The bourbon cream, Bailey's. Okay, that's Irish cream.
Right.
Bourbon cream, incredible.
This is so for those who don't know, before I had my current job at LipDib, I worked for the Sazerac company. The Sazerac company is the parent company of the Buffalo Trace Distillery. Oh. So I have had bourbon cream and I can attest that it is delicious. Yeah, it's really good.
So I've been brewing because I'm home. I've been brewing my own coffee in a percolator every morning, and I had half of it left. So half coffee. It's at 5 o'clock. Half coffee, half cream. That was hands down one of the best cocktails I have had in a while. It was.
And when you're saying cream, like what's the consistency of this stuff? Is it like pretty thick?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
It's not quite as like if I'm remembering Bailey's. Bailey's to me was always a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
This is a little bit. I mean, it's not heavy whipping cream. It's not that thick.
Right.
But there's a little bit more of I would say a richness to it.
Oh, that'd be
Mhm.
good.
Like a really good chocolate milk,
Yeah.
kind
Okay.
of
Yeah.
consistency, like a really rich. Yeah. And the bourbon doesn't come across, especially in that pairing, the bourbon doesn't come across overbearing. It's actually really delicious. And that
Yeah.
was kind of a new for me. I was like, oh, this is, and we're gonna have to give it a 5 o'clock name of some kind, because you can't, this can't be your morning drink, right?
It sounds like a good Saturday morning drink, to be honest.
No, right on. I put it in
do
the
that,
whiskey.
then go out and mow the lawn. And I think that sounds like a great just transition to mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning.
Is, or paired with a morning cigar, like that could be a really. It paired really well with the. I had a Perdomo firecracker, and they just paired really well together, and so it was pretty good. I haven't been able to find the Buffalo Trace cream here in our market. We found it down in Texas, and then the weekend we found it. My son found it here in Omaha, so he picked up another bottle. So
so where do you find it? Because I'm gonna have to try it.
I think Spirit World.
Spirit World.
I think out of Spirit World. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Cody, do you have a go-to? So that's kind of become, now I'm all pumped on that cocktail. You have a go-to cocktail you're making for yourself right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been a lot of sipping things neat for me recently. And I've, been very fortunate. I've got a number of bottles now that I need to actually start cracking open and tasting and trying through. Most recently, I made, trying to think. I think most recently I made a Vesper, which is a martini. The Vesper martini is actually James Bond's martini.
All right.
Nice. That was good. That was nice.
Yeah.
And then I think before that, why am I blanking right now? Not the brown derby, the bee's knees. That's what it was. The bee's knees. So if you don't know, this drink is gin, lemon juice, honey, shaken up. And it's delicious.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah. It's like this honey lemon, super light. It's what I believe the Irish call a session drink. You can sit there and just sort of to do one after another.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're drinking right from the hive and the tree at the same time.
At the exact same time.
Right.
Yep.
The pine tree. Yeah. Mike, anything you're working on?
Drink wise?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Sticking to the seltzers?
Well, there's an embarrassing one that we do in the summer that I'm just not even gonna say because it's like,
All right. I'll let you off the hook, man.
I'll say, just, because you guys know I'm not a high class drinker. So like, but we call it a Mally Dew, and it's Malibu rum and Mountain Dew, and it is for some reason just delicious. And I don't know why that makes it so good, but it's one of those summery, just kind of sit around a pool. You have some Mountain Dew and you have Malibu rum, which is everywhere. Everyone has that, so it's easy.
It's easy to get. Have you ever tried that with Baja Blast?
Oh no, but everyone loves Baja Blast.
Yeah, I mean that'd be another good summer.
Yeah, but tequila wise, Casamigos has been my favorite tequila. It's been just I don't know. I've been drinking a lot of that lately. It's been really good.
Have you tried Termana? It's the Rocks tequila.
I don't think so.
I might be.
Wait, is that a Casamigos or is that a different brand?
No, it's a different brand. Termana is the brand that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
I haven't tried that one yet.
That he came out with. Yeah,
pretty good.
I've heard it's good. I haven't personally tried it myself, but I've heard through the network that I have that it was well done. So
gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
I'll try that one.
Cody, thanks for coming out tonight. We've kept you way longer than I told you, but I appreciate you doing that. We'll let you go back to your fine California weather as Mike and I kind of wrap the show. But thanks for doing it. Let's not make it 2 years the next time. And folks want to listen to Shots of History. What are you thinking you'll be doing coming up? You can just find it by searching Shots of History Is it Shot of History or Shots?
Shots of History. There is actually another podcast called Shot of History, which is, I think, just two friends getting drunk and talking about history. Mine is a little bit different from that. So if you just want to listen to some slurred words, Shot of History might be more your speed. No, Shots with an S, Shots of History. Right now, kind of been keeping consistent with publishing an episode a month. And I think coming up is just going to be more focused on kind of the industry. And I'm talking right now to a few different bartenders and a few different folks within the industry, potentially trying to get them to come on. It's tough, right? We're trying to line up the dates. And, I live more of a daytime schedule. Bartenders tend to have more of a nocturnal schedule that they keep. So sometimes getting things, and then you throw in like I'm on the West Coast, they're on the East Coast. Scheduling can be a little bit difficult, but
you're working during the week. They're all weekends.
We're busy during the weekend. They're like, I can do Tuesday at 12:30. What do you have going on? I'm like, I got 3. I'm booked up, double booked at meetings. What do you mean? What do I have going on? Shots of History. Wherever you're currently listening to your podcast, you can find Shots of History.
That's super cool. Encourage folks to go out and listen to that as well. Cody, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll just let you drop, and we'll look forward to having you back here sooner than 2 years. How's that?
I love it. I love it. Really good to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, likewise, Cody. Thanks a ton, man. Good seeing you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Cody.
Couple reminders for individuals on the way out. One, if you want to join us, Mike. Well, hold on. Before I do that, anything else you want to throw in there?
Well, what I was going to say is, the alcohol industry is one of those that as a consumer, I feel like all of us, and especially the ones who are really into it, feel like a lot. I love talking to Cody because you learn so much about kind of like the back end of what makes the whole industry run, right? And you learn so much about the laws, regulations, the different things the companies are trying. I love the insight we get from the totally opposite end of this industry that we all partake in, but that, we don't know how it gets to our mouth. Really, right?
Around 700 milliliters versus 750.
Exactly.
No idea. That's super cool. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. No, good stuff. I always appreciate I was talking to Sarah tonight about Home Gadget Geeks, and I was just kind of like, we're coming up on 500. I reevaluate about every year. I kind of start thinking, is it time to wrap it? Is it time at 500? Is that the time to wrap it? And then I was thinking, I have no reason to do it. All of these are fun. And it's not like the audience is like, you can't talk about that. Nobody said by no one ever. So listen, if you're listening to this, if you made it to this far, all the way through that interview, you liked the interview, because you would have turned it off a long time ago if you didn't. So thanks for making it all the way through. A couple reminders on the way out. One, big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. We picked up a new one this week. I'll be adding that name and talking about it next week. But appreciate your support on Patreon. Head out to theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. If you want to join us in the Discord group, it's been kind of quiet, but it can pick up from time to time. I do
appreciate everyone's comments. People did answer my questions as far as to, go away a little bit from self-hosting. So I appreciate you guys putting what you guys are doing, what you guys are using out there. It really helped me, actually. I was talking to Hannah about it this week. We're trying to decide kind of what direction we want to go, if we want to stay with what we got or switch it up. So appreciate your guys' comments. I was reading through all those.
Sweet. Theaverageguy.tv/Discord if you want to join in that conversation. Leave us a message, homegadgetgeeks.com. There's a little microphone in the bottom right-hand corner. And then don't forget, you can send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Find me at Jay Collison on Twitter. And I have the Twitter app open. There's still lots of traffic out there. So if you want to connect on Twitter, you can find Mike at Uyghur Tech, right? Why did all of a sudden that just escaped my mind? TheAverageGuy.tv, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. If you want to get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting, both web and media hosting, if you're thinking to start a podcast. And I mean, the best time to start a podcast was 15 years ago, but the second best time is right now. If you want to do it, maplegrovepartners.com. This Christian. Plans start as little as $10, and he's got some room, and he's got some fantastic now redundant data sites set up. So he's pretty proud of that. maplegrovepartners.com. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. Mike, you and I will have the helm next week, working on getting Aaron Lawrence to come back. And so we are excited about some things that are happening ahead. And we'd love to have you come out on a Thursday night and join us live, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, averageguy.tv/live. live. Thanks for coming out. For those few, it was a long conversation, but for those who stayed, thanks for hanging around. I know Brian's still out there, maybe Joe as well. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. I haven't done a marathon one in a while, and that one's an hour 30 probably.
That was a yeah. Well, I mean, we started the show at 8:10.
So good though. Yeah, so hour 30.
When it flew by, I couldn't believe how long it had gone. We were talking. So
it's such a good topic, and it's so dynamic right now with where it's going and the regulations in it. And Joe, here, hold on, let's get over to the chat room. Joe threw in the chat room, look at this Doge.
Dude, I can't believe it.
Oh my gosh. Brian, thanks Brian.
What did we start the day at? It started at 12 cents today.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Doge did.
That's just crazy. Joe says he should have listened to his wife.
A week ago, 6 cents. Just a week ago.
What's its all-time high?
I think we're at the all-time high.
We're at it? Really?
Oh yeah.
Well, could somebody start doing that with Burst? Because I have a lot of Burst. And it would be awesome if I could get whoa. Holy cow. A buddy of mine, speaking of pricing, hold on, let me get this out of the screen here. Where are we at? A buddy of mine sent me a cigar, a Gurkha His Majesty Reserve. Can you see the price down there?
Whoa.
$749.99
for one?
For one. Well, hold on. One cigar. One. And it's not even an NFT.
Jeez. I know. I've been trying to think about what NFT I'm going to put out there.
You got to try one NFT, just so you know how it works, right?
Yeah, I know.
It says
like naming rights to my next kid or something.
No, I will not allow you to sell the naming rights to your next child. I'm putting my foot down on that one.
That's the tamer version of the other thing I was thinking about. So, so now I really know your answer on the other one.
Yeah, the other one's definitely no.
Yeah, the other definitely no.
The MSRP on this is $3,000.
How?
I don't know.
Okay, but I do not know the market for cigars. Like what's a good Cuban? Like a legit Cuban? How much does that cost?
$40.
Oh, so what is making isn't Cuban like the best?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so anymore. Nicaragua is kind of leading the way right now. A lot of that seed left Cuba when they closed, and now the hybrid seed, it's just like corn, right? There's so much hybrid tobacco being grown.
Got it. Okay.
Manufactured, that kind of stuff.
And are the purists not into that?
Well, I think Cuban I think the some of the tobacco that's being grown outside of Cuba now has actually better soil conditions, better growing conditions. They're treated differently, they're aged differently. So I think you get now. I've only had one Cuban candle in my whole life, so I can't. I'm not we should get Ed Sullivan to come back and talk about it. But for what I hear in the industry is that everybody else is caught up or exceeded.
Got it.
Now, Gurkha is not necessarily a brand that demands. Typically, they're on the cheaper end of these things. They like a Punch or Drew Estates. They're kind of on the $5 to $7 range.
Got it.
So it's a little surprising. It's $7.50. Yikes!
That's insane.
But
roll up a couple $100 bills and light them on fire.
There is the novelty of the Cuban, right? Because it has such incredible lore. It is a brand in itself, that because of embargoes and those kinds of things, it's made it like we actually made it more expensive when we did that, not
Right.
not cheaper.
Not based on quality either.
No, they're good. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
But there's some pretty good, when you think about an Atabay or a Byron, those are some pretty good brands that easily rival, and those are 30 or $35 cigars. So those are, and they're really, really, really good. I have a Byron. I probably shouldn't show these on YouTube. I have a Byron short, so it's a 47 by 4.5, something like that. I just need to smoke that thing because it's so good. Oh, I shouldn't have said smoke. No,
I think we've already said it. That ship has sailed.
Yeah. Oh, a long time ago. Yeah.
Good stuff.
If you're listening live, thanks for coming out and staying and going the distance, as they say, with us. Appreciate you guys and your willingness just to kind of hang out and listen for those 3 of you. And I think one of them's me. I think it's Joe and Brian that are left. Guys, thanks for coming out. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Take care.